I wanted to address something that I've been told by some who have conversations with well-known apologetic nuts, right? Some of the really hardened Trinitarian, I'll say whack jobs, right? Because they're not really normal Trinitarians. They're kind of the fringe element of insanity, like barely hanging on. They come up with the lamest arguments possible, all so they can try to salvage any kind of shred of credibility for a post-biblical doctrine, totally contradicted, not only by the biblical text, but as we'll discuss next, their own Bibles. So recently I've been told that one of these spiritually retarded lames has been telling people that Jesus is eternally begotten because the Father is eternally the Father, like always been the Father. And so in order to always be the Father, they would have had to always be the Son, which is not true. The Bible doesn't teach this. The Bible actually teaches the exact opposite, doesn't it? Because it speaks explicitly of Jesus as God's firstborn. It defines firstborn as the beginning of one's children, Deuteronomy 21:17, Jesus being God's firstborn, Hebrews 1:6, firstborn of all creation, Colossians 1:15, the only begotten God or Son, monogenes theos huios, John 1:18. All these temporal relationships and terms and distinctions, certain Trinitarian apologetic nuts, in order to destroy or try to, right, because they can't handle the Bible the way it's written, they just make things up, right? They just invent ideas that have nothing to do with the Bible, but that have everything to do with teachings that come after the Bible, so that they can invalidate the Bible with their traditions. It's disgusting, isn't it? Of course, the Bible doesn't present Yahuwah as always having been the father of a son. It explicitly identifies him as having a firstborn one. And in Proverbs 8, the one whom the Bible identifies, including Jesus himself, as the wisdom that God made as the beginning of his way, just like the firstborn is defined as the beginning of one's generative power or children, RK, and with the genitive is always meant or meaning the beginning of that which is in the genitive, Revelation 3:14, creation. This is what the Bible teaches. The Bible doesn't teach that Yahuwah was eternally the Father. He was the Father when he became Father as he begat, created, Proverbs 8, 22 through 25, his Son, the one who was with him before he made all things, where creation and begot are used in parallel sequence because they mean the same thing like we've talked about. See my Part 6, the end of Trinitarianism, for more on that. The Bible calls the Father Yahuwah the Ha'on, the existing one. Exodus 3:14, Septuagint translation, doesn't use ego eimi as the predicate for ego eimi. It's I am the Ha'on, ego eimi Ha'on, which is identified as the Father, not explicitly by Father, but in comparison to the Son and the seven spirits before his throne in Revelation 1:4. He's the existing one. He doesn't have to always be a father. Fathers are fathers when they beget sons or daughters. But Trinitarian whack jobs who reject the Bible and try to smash into the Bible concepts that come later, they just can't have it, right? So they just invent things. Well, God would have always had to have been the Father, so the Son always had to have been until eternal generation. No, no, and no. Those are not taught in the Bible. You're just making things up, like usual, which contradict the Bible. I encourage you, my friends, stay with the Bible. when these apologetic nuts invent things because they don't have anything left. They're done, right? It's over. So they have to come up with all these excuses and lies, totally unbiblical concepts that contradict the Bible. They're lies. Just say, hey, that's an interesting idea you have there. Where's that in the Bible? Where does it say that the Father can only be the Father, or the Father is always the Father before he begets a son? It doesn't. It says that the firstborn is the beginning of the Father's children or generative power. That's why he's called the firstborn, the arche of God's creation, because he wasn't the Father before the firstborn. He simply existed before all creation. Ha-on. These are all biblical concepts and terms. Every single one of them that I just used and referred to. So just point that out to people who reject the Bible and try to invalidate with their traditions. You'll be fine. You don't really need to come to me for these things. I already know how lame they are. I've defeated all of them. Any of them that really matter, right? And none of them really do, because they're not even teaching the Bible is true. They're teaching their later doctrine. All this other stuff. So just call their bluff. Right? You don't have to be intimidated. Just say, well, where does it say that in the Bible? And then you'll see the blank look on their face, or they'll point you to a text that in no way teaches what they say. And then just point out, well, that, oh, you must be lying then. Because the Bible says he's the firstborn, and firstborn means the beginning of one's children, generative power. He's the beginning of God's creation. So no, he wasn't the Father before there was an actual thing that the Father made in creation. That's why in John 5:26, while the Father has life, he gives it to the Son, the firstborn one. I mean, it just couldn't be any clearer, could it? But when you talk to people who don't believe the Bible, doesn't matter how clear it is.